going to give us some tips for dealing with stress. Stevie is the founder and CEO of Orange Compass LLC, the training division of Stevie Dawn Inspires, which is dedicated to providing engaging and fun training for organizations in the areas of leadership, management, communication, and emotional intelligence. Stevie is a favorite with many local organizations, and we're thrilled to have her today to help us get through this time. But before we get started, I want to thank our BOMA Greater Dallas Foundation partners for their support. 5, ABM, Empire Roofing, Facility Solutions Group, Night Restoration Services, Select Commercial Services, Sun Commercial Roofs, and United Protective Services. And one more reminder before we begin. This session is being recorded. Also, if you have questions for Stevie, send it to us and we'll try to get to it. Now, on to our discussion. Stevie, I'll turn the screen over to you.
Great. Jacqueline, just give me a thumbs up that you can see me and see the presentation and hear me okay.
I can see the presentation. I cannot see you.
Well, let's try that. How about there? Thumbs up. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here with us this morning. It is a stressful time. It has been stressful for all of us in different ways. And so what I wanted to share with you today are kind of my 4 coping strategies for stress, how I'm getting through it, how I'm handling it, and things that I know kind of work for everyone when it comes to trying to figure out how to get through these stressful times. As Jacqueline said earlier, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box, send them to the panelists, and we will make sure to get those answered. And Jacqueline's going to be making sure that I stick to getting those questions answered. So if you have them, please send them. I want to start with just an overall statement that managing your stress starts with managing your emotions. So when it comes to stressful times, one of the things that tends to happen is our emotions tend to run hot. We tend to run high, we're overwhelmed, and there's a lot going on. And these emotions are what cause us to feel things like stress, anxiety, tiredness. Some of us get hangry, right? Those are emotions that are causing those biological feelings. And so the best way to try and handle our stress and manage our stress is to make sure we first identify that these are emotions that are playing up and learn how to manage those emotions so that we keep them as much at bay as possible so that we can really be focused on continuing our work, continuing to serve our clients and our organizations, continuing to serve our family in these trying times. So managing stress starts with managing your emotions. And with that, I want to talk first about just this idea of how our emotions play into our communication. Now, a lot of you may be like me, finding that you're doing a lot more calls and meetings and things via Zoom. And while that is great that we're able to connect and to quote unquote, air quote, see each other, there's also this element though of, but are we really focused? Because let's face it, you've got the dogs barking, you've got the kids right outside, you've got 3 other screens open, plus your phone. Are we really focused on the conversation at hand? Communication during stressful times is even worse because our emotions are playing up and not necessarily allowing us to listen. For a lot of us, we're walking around every day like a dog with party hats over his ears. We're walking around hearing our own thoughts, thinking through our own life narrative, and not necessarily listening to the people around us. And what that means is that we're responding, right, to any communication we have, any meeting we're having. We're responding from our emotions, from what we're saying in our own head not necessarily responding to what's actually being said by the person on the other end. So our emotions not only lead us to feel more stress and lead us to feel overwhelmed, but they also lead us to struggle in our communication. And that's why I think managing our stress, managing our emotions is so important right now, because with everything that's going on, we all have a lot of thoughts in our heads. And if we're listening to those, we may be missing out on the conversations that we are having. There's also the side of some of the conversations you're having are probably with other people who are stressed and who are feeling emotional and having all the things. So are they really able to communicate well on either end of that? Now, we can't control anybody else. We can't try and force them to communicate better or to manage their emotions. All we can do is fix us and make sure we're managing our emotions. So hopefully our message is as clear as possible. And when we're talking about managing the stress and the chaos that we're in, we have to remember that there are two things that all of us struggle with emotionally, two things. And these are two things that are really prevalent right now: fear and uncertainty. Fear and uncertainty are the two things that most of us will respond emotionally to. When we have fear, when we have uncertainty, we're likely stressed out, overwhelmed, anxious, not sleeping well, not eating well, not working out, all of those things, because we're just uncertain. That uncertainty and that fear of the unknown plagues us in our emotions. So right now, everybody in the world, I think, is dealing with those two things, fear and uncertainty. So as you're communicating with people, as you're talking with your kids and your family, as you're talking with your clients and your customers, how are you making sure that you're understanding that everybody's going through that? And that's why I think I always want to start with, yes, we need to learn how to manage stress, and I want to talk about that. But the first step is learning how to manage our emotions and understanding that everybody's going through it. So nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect anyway, but nobody's perfect really right now. Everybody is beyond perfect right now because we're all just doing what we can, managing it to the best of our ability. And so I do want you to think about that and be aware of that as it's happening, because I think those are important things to think about as we go through this process. Plus, it gave me an excuse to put a dog on the screen with party hats. Who doesn't love that? All right. So what I'd love to do is use the chat a little bit if we can. So if you have the ability to get in the chat box here or in the Q&A box, you can put it in there too, either way. I would love for you to be able to put into there, how are you feeling today? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling today? 1 being it's not the best day in the world and I kind of want to just go to sleep and have it be Saturday already, which by the way is totally okay to have a 1 kind of day. Or are you feeling more of a 10 kind of day, right? Where everything's going great, everything's awesome, and things are really going your way. So if you could just send us a little message in the chat between a 1 and a 10, how's your day going today? How are you feeling? Are you feeling a 1? Are you feeling a 10? Are you feeling a 5, an 8, a 9? Just go into the chat, type that out for us so we can kind of see how people are feeling today. Starting to see the numbers come in. We've got some 8s, some 9s. We've got a couple 3s. Feeling a 5. Absolutely. Feeling a 6. Good. 6, 4. Absolutely. So this is what we call a pulse check, right? This is our chance to just check in with ourselves and see how are we feeling today. Most days we kind of have like an average work day, and I'll use my own, right? If we were in a room, I'd ask somebody to share, but since we're doing this, I'll just share myself. So for me, an average day is probably a 6, 7. That's kind of my normal, right? That's a good day for me. That's not a bad day. It's not an amazing day, but it's just an average day. An average day is about a 6, 7. Now, I will tell you, when I'm stressed out, when I'm going through all of this right now, where I'm having to work from home all the time and deal with family and all these additional struggles, I will tell you my norm right now is probably more like a 4 or 5, right? That's good. If I can get to a 5, 6, man, that's an amazing day. I don't know that I've had a lot of 9, 10 days in the last couple of weeks. It's just been a struggle. And I want you to realize that whatever your number is, that's okay. It's your number. It's how you're feeling, and you're entitled to that. What we want to make sure of is that when we're managing our emotions and we're managing our stress, that we don't take our number, whatever our number is, that we don't take our number out on somebody else. It's ours, and we need to own it for us. So if you're having, and we've all had bad days, you've had a 2-day before, you've had a 3-day before, whatever those numbers are for you, we want to make sure that we don't let that come out at the people around us, because they didn't necessarily cause our bad day, especially in times of stress, especially right now. You might be talking with somebody who's having a 3 kind of day, and it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with the work. It has nothing to do with your service. It's just that they're having a tough day because the world is kind of in a tough place. And so I wanted to start with that exercise just so we could all kind of come to that reality of this is where we're at, and it's okay to be wherever you're at. Whatever your number is for today, it's okay. That's your number. The trick is, how do we make sure that we're not unleashing any kind of emotion on somebody else that doesn't really need it, right? They don't deserve it. Just because I'm having a bad day doesn't mean everybody around me has to. And we have all been with people who did that. We have all had that experience of somebody who had a bad day and then took it out on everybody else. And we don't want to be that person. And when we get stressed, what I will tell you is our tolerance threshold, when we get stressed, that tolerance slips down. And we've all been there too. You get stressed out and you realize you're snapping at people more than you should. You say something maybe that you didn't mean to say in your outside voice, right? So we all know that with stress, our threshold becomes lower and we end up saying things we shouldn't say. So doing a pulse check on yourself is a great way to just kind of center yourself and say, okay, here's where I'm at, and here's how I'm going to keep moving along. And for those of you that are leaders, I always say it is not our job as a leader to make anybody's day a 10. It's not my job to make their day a 10. I'm not a miracle worker. My job as a leader is to not make their day any worse. That's my job. If at all possible, let me try and not add to their 3-day or their 4-day. Let me try and make it better, but let me try not to make it worse, right? Because we know people who've done that to us as well. So just kind of a place to center ourselves as we move forward. Thank you all for participating in the chat. It makes me feel like we're all in this together, and I really appreciate it. All right, so from there, why do emotions matter, right? Well, they matter because they impact our ability to listen. The more emotional we are, the harder it is to hear things. It changes our effectiveness in our communication. It changes our decision-making process. And then the big one that I think we're all dealing with right now is when you're stressed, I don't care who you are, when you're stressed, your productivity tends to go down. You may have had some moments lately where you realize you're staring at the same screen you were staring at 20 minutes ago and you haven't done anything. That's what stress does to you. It can paralyze people. And so we want to know, how can we manage that stress to make it as good an experience, our day, as best as it can be, even though we're going to have stress. There's no way to cut stress out of your life. And stress, by the way, a little bit of good, healthy stress is a good thing. So we don't want to cut stress out entirely. We just want to make sure that we're managing it so that we can be as productive as possible in these moments. So I think I've probably shared this with y'all before in one of our other classes, but 60% of workplace emotion is caused, or workplace drama is caused by personal emotion. Right now, I would say that number is going up because everybody's working from home. So their home emotional stuff is around them more frequently. Typically what we say is, you know, all that stuff in life that happens between when you get up, let's say at like 6, and when you get to work at 8, there's a lot of life in those 2 hours, and that can kind of kickstart your day, either good or bad. But then once you get to work, you kind of settle into work and then you get focused on work stuff. Right now, we're seeing that number go up because people aren't really able to separate work from home as well. I was talking to somebody the other day who is balancing having a full-time job that she has to show up for on video conferences and phone calls. She also has 3 young kids, and her husband is also working full-time. So they're both trying to manage their schedule and being on their Zoom calls, plus manage the 3 children that are now home with them. I cannot even imagine that stress, but I can imagine that it probably is showing up in their work discussions because they can't help it. It's around them. So I think we need to have some empathy for people and understand that that's where they're coming from. So let's get into these 4 coping skills I want us to talk about today. Just 4 coping skills just to kind of get us to manage our stress and move forward. Number 1 is going to be to focus on all of our senses. Realize that a lot of your stress can be counteracted by changing your environment. And I'm going to give you some suggestions on that. We need to create boundaries for our emotions. We need to make sure that our emotions are lined up, right? And we try and create a boundary for them so we're not taking them out on everybody else. We need to make sure we're accepting that people have different tolerance levels. And then we need to prioritize joy. And I know joy is kind of a weird word to say in times like this, but joy is a choice to be happy given the circumstances we're under. And I think that's really something we need to prioritize right now to manage our stress in the best way possible. So let's talk about focusing on the senses. So 5 senses, right? What we know, right, and what research tells us is that our happiness and our joy is impacted by the things we're around, not just the people. Because I know some of you are thinking, yeah, well, if these people were nicer, I'd be okay. I get that, but that's not what we're talking about, right? It's actually our senses, right? Sight, sound, smell, touch, taste. So for a lot of us, especially when we're working from home, you may set up a space that you're working in and then you're there all day long and you just don't move. Well, the problem with that is that we normally in a workday would move a little bit. You would get up and go to a meeting. You would go have coffee. You would go out to lunch with a friend. Now that we're all working from home, most of us are staying in one spot the majority of the time. And that actually does lower our ability to feel joy and happiness. We need a change in environment to help us. And so one of the things you can do is look at, are there things related to the 5 senses that you could change as a part of your daily process, right? So sight. How does your visual sight, so your visual environment, contribute to your peace? Do you have photos up? You may not be able to see it because the camera is so small here and I have my laptop connected, but this back here is a photo of a shark that my husband took on our shark diving trip in October. So when I'm standing here and I'm talking, number 1, I get to see it over my shoulder. That is perfectly placed, if you ask me, in terms of sight and adding some joy. But it's also something I can turn and look at. Color is another thing that brings a lot of people joy. If you can see on my wall, I've got my calendars with my Post-it notes. They're all different colors and they're color-coded. So do you have something around you, sight-wise, that brings you peace or joy? And it could just be, take 5 minutes today, push back from the computer, and go through photos on your phone. Just go through your photos of your last vacation, reminisce, enjoy the memory. We all need something visual around us that brings us joy. Some people, it might be you need to get up and go for a walk in nature so you can see the sun. Although right now, for me, it's raining, so it wouldn't be the best choice, but something like that. Sound is another one. A lot of us have playlists that we love, music that we love, podcasts that you love to listen to, any of those things. Whatever you have that's going to bring you joy, that's going to lift your spirits, you need to have that. Now, I know that obviously when we're on a Zoom call, I can't be listening to my music at the same time, but when I'm typing out email, I can. When I'm in between meetings, I can. So have something that brings you a little bit of peace and a little bit of calm for your sense of sound, right? Now, for some people, they prefer just to put on noise canceling headphones and just have silence. That's also silence in this case is also a sound, totally okay. Smell, right? Not bad smells, but good smells. I am lucky enough, and I'm going to use that word lucky, just keep that in mind as I tell you this. I am lucky enough to live with all of my parents. We have dependent parents. So I have my mom, my stepdad, and my husband's mom all living with us, which right now means all the time, 24/7. So you can imagine all of that, whatever you want to imagine. But I am lucky enough that my dad is a baker. That's what he loves to do. So I love the smell of like chocolate chip cookies, pumpkin pie, and cake. And when he's stressed, he bakes. So right now we have all the sugary things in the world. I love those smells. So when he's baking those things, right, I will move my laptop and move my work area closer to the kitchen so that I get the smell. It brings me a sense of joy. You could have the same thing with some perfume, a candle, any of those kinds of things, especially now that you're at home and you don't have an open workspace where you may have to worry about other people and what they like in terms of smells or sounds or sights. Hey, it's just you. So you can have whatever you want. I will tell you, I've been wearing my shark slippers a lot because nobody around here to judge me on that. So I can just wear my shark slippers and that gives me a bit of joy. Another thing is taste, favorite snacks, favorite coffee, right? Taking that 5 minutes and going and getting your favorite coffee is going to be helpful right now. And then for touch, it's usually soft things, or some people have things that are meaningful to them. For me, I like soft, like blankets and sweaters because I'm always cold. Even in my own house, I'm always cold. So having those and putting those on. When you think about the 5 senses and you just think about doing little things during the day to decrease that stress, to bring you a sense of peace, to bring you a sense of calm, those are the things that are truly going to help you. But here's my real thing about this. So many of you are probably saying, yeah, Stevie Dawn, we get that. Like, that makes sense. Yeah, it's easy. It's not earth-shattering. It's not. But I want to ask, when did you prioritize it? When did this show up on your to-do list as something to take 5 minutes and do? Most of us aren't prioritizing this kind of stress reduction, and we need to be doing that right now. You need to be thinking about during your day, when are you going to take a 5-minute break and do something that refills your joy? When are you going to take a 5-minute break and listen to some good music? When are you going to take a 5-minute break and walk outside and just to walk to the mailbox, just so you get some fresh air, right? We need to take those breaks for our senses. Nobody works well in one spot for 8 hours, head down at the computer. Nobody works well like that. So don't put that on you. You know, I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody who's been just, she's an extrovert like me. And so this time at home has been really tough for her. And one of the things that she realized, and I think this is probably a good lesson for most of us, is that while she would think that working from home was great, now that she's doing it, she realizes she needs structure. She needs to get up at the same time and show up at the same time. She needs to actually get dressed, put on makeup, do her face, all the things, right? Because when she doesn't do those structural things, she gets more stressed and more overwhelmed. She's not as productive because our structure actually allows us to be more productive at work. So are you still sticking to a structure? I heard another tip yesterday that I thought was great. She said, you know, typically she would drive to work, and her drive to work, she usually left the house around 7, got to work around 7:45. Well, now she gets up. Well, her drive to work is a walk down the hallway. So she's been starting work at like 7:15. And she's like, but you know what? I don't have to start work. I'm not working less. I'm not stopping work early. It's just I'm ready. So I go to work. It just so happens to be 15 feet instead of a 45-minute commute. So what she did instead is she started setting that 45 minutes as a time for her to work on something new, develop a new skill, do something different. She's using it to learn a different language. And so instead of just going through, right, again, structure, instead of just going through and saying, well, I'm just going to start working earlier because I can and why not, she decided to use that time to help herself, to grow herself, and it has helped her with her stress. So think about your structure, think about how you're bringing in your environment and how your environment is to help you have the most productive time that you can. So if you have any questions on this stuff while I'm going, by the way, put them in the chat, let us know. If you have any questions on this stuff, I know a lot of this stuff isn't life-altering, but it's the reminders that we need. I'm a big believer in sometimes we need accountability to remind us to do the things we know are good for us. And so maybe this is that moment for you. So the first thing I want you to think about is how are you focusing on all of your senses and making sure your environment is something that brings you joy. I just saw somebody put, currently lighting my favorite candle. I love that. That's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. By the way, I had somebody ask me the other day because they saw my koozie on a Zoom and they were thinking I was drinking a beer while I was doing it. I'm not, I promise you, it's a Diet Coke. I get it. I like it really cold, but then my hand gets cold. So I still use a koozie. In case any of you were thinking something other about me, I wanted to let you know. All right. Another thing we need to think about is understanding our emotional tolerance, right? All of us have a tolerance scale. How much we can tolerate before we explode, right? And so when you understand your emotional tolerance, you gain more control over your communication, over your actions, over your decision making. And like I said earlier, a lot of us in this time of the world, our tolerance level, our tolerance threshold is a lot lower. So we react a little bit faster than we probably mean to, and then we probably know would be helpful to people. So what we want to think about in that emotional tolerance is just realizing that because our tolerance levels are different, how somebody else reacts to something may not be how I react to something. You know, they may have just hit their limit, like the final straw, right? And this is where they're at. So understanding that of others, understanding that we all have a different tolerance level is super important to being able to continue to go and have great conversation and still work together. It's just understanding those tolerance levels. And again, you can do this on kind of a, you know, I think it goes a lot with your pulse check, your 1 to 10, right? If you're having a 7 kind of day, then you probably have a 7 level tolerance. So you're probably doing pretty good. If you're having a 1 day, everything affects you harder, right? So your threshold is a lot lower. You kind of have a 1 threshold. So I think they kind of go together, but I do want you to consider what's your emotional threshold as you're going through things. Now, I also think that we need to create some emotional boundaries for ourselves when we're dealing with stress. Now, this comes from that idea of saying, I can identify my emotions. I can identify that I'm stressed. I can identify what I'm going through. And since I can identify it, I can feel it, and then I can release it and let it go. And so I really think about this in some kind of steps, right? Number 1, accept that you have the emotion and that it's playing up for you right now. That's okay. It's okay to feel scared. It's okay to have fear. It's okay to be stressed out because you've got little ones at your feet while you're trying to get your work done. It's okay to have all of those emotions. And it is okay to break down. I think sometimes we put a stigma out there in the world that it's not okay to break down. It's not okay to feel something in all the ways. Yeah, it is. It's totally okay to break down. It's totally okay to have a meltdown. The question is, are you able to pick yourself up and get back to it, right? It's okay to have it. What do you do after it? And so one of the things is after you accept the emotion is to set a deadline for your rebound. Now, something I want to put in here that I think is important is for every minute that you're feeling any kind of emotion, it takes you an equal minute to get back to a normal kind of baseline for yourself. So for every minute takes an equal minute. I want you to think about when you've had a conversation with somebody, maybe it didn't go so well, and you were in that conversation, that back and forth for a good 20 minutes, right? 20 minutes of emotional time. When you get back to your desk, are you truly able to just dive right in and be normal? No, it takes you about 20 to 30 minutes to recover, to process everything, and be able to refocus on the work. What that means is the longer we are in that emotion, the longer we're living in that emotional time, the longer it's going to take us to get back to normal. And so one of the things that I've learned to do over years of experience of stressing out, because definitely I am one of those people who gets stressed. I am that person with a very low threshold, and I get stressed super easy. And so what I've had to learn is I have to set a deadline for myself, how long I'm allowed to feel it, right? Now, you may think that's a little crazy, but just stick with me here. If I'm having a bad day today and just everything keeps going wrong and everything's stressing me out, there's no point in telling myself, just get over it. I'm not going to just get over it. I need time to feel those emotions. And so what I typically do is set myself a deadline of the day, right? So I'm having a bad day today. Okay, that's what it is. You know what? But tomorrow is going to be better. I'm going to wake up ready to face the day with a different attitude tomorrow. So I give myself the deadline. I have the rest of tonight. I can be upset tonight. I can throw myself a pity party with some wine later. But tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to face the day with a different attitude, right? So by setting myself the deadline and by saying that to myself in my head, right? Remember the dog with the party hats, right? Saying it to myself in my own narrative. What I'm saying to myself is it's okay to feel it. You have until tomorrow, but tomorrow I want you to wake up and put a new spin on the day, because we truly can choose to be different. We can choose to feel differently, but we've got to set a deadline for it. If you don't set a deadline, you're likely to keep bringing it up and you're not really letting it go. Now, I don't think that everything takes a whole day to get over. I think you can have a bad sales call with a client and, you know, it's 10 minutes of your life. They say no. Okay, didn't work so well. Give yourself 10 minutes to recover and then move along, right? I don't think our deadline always has to be a full day. Sometimes my deadline can be 10 minutes, can be 15 minutes. It's about setting that deadline, telling yourself it's okay to feel the emotion for that amount of time. And then you need to breathe through it. One of the best ways to get rid of stress, and it's silly because it's simple, but it is the best proven way to get rid of stress, is to take really deep breaths. To just stop yourself, take a breath, and your stress will go away. Because what happens is as we're feeling stressed, right, we start short-circuiting our breathing because our body is preparing for fight or flight. And so it's getting all ramped up and our adrenaline's starting to spike. When that happens, you are actually getting less oxygen to your brain, which means your ability to think clearly, your ability to be logical, all of that goes out the window. So I'm hyperventilating because I'm getting ready because I'm going to fight this or whatever it is because I'm stressed and I'm feeling that emotion. Now I'm not thinking clearly, right? So what happens is just by taking the deep breaths, you're getting more oxygen to your brain and you're slowing your adrenaline. And by doing that, you're actually able to get over the emotion faster than you would if you didn't do that. So while it can be the most simplest of things to just take some deep breaths, it's still there. It really does work, and it's scientifically proven to work. So after I decide, okay, I'm stressed out, I'm going to give myself an hour. I'm going to give myself an hour to just be in it. Then I'm going to breathe. I'm going to take a couple minutes and just do some deep breaths. Now, for me, I'm not good in silence, so I'm probably doing those deep breaths while listening to some kind of song or playlist. I do have my husband has an angry boy music playlist. I have an angry girl music playlist. So I'm probably listening to that while I'm deep breathing, right? But I'm allowing myself the time to just be, okay, it's okay to stress, but I got to breathe. The other thing to do when you're feeling stressed is to move. When we move our bodies, that's why exercise, right? So for me, I have a Peloton bike. Getting on the bike is not necessarily an enjoyable experience. There's this whole, like, I got to change clothes. I got to put my hair up. Do I really want to work out? Right? But once I'm on the bike and I do the bike and I do the things, right? We get happy endorphins, right? We get happy hormones because we're moving. So sometimes if you're stressed, especially right now with work, best thing you can do is get up, go for a walk. And it can be a walk inside your house. You don't have to go anywhere. You can just walk from room to room, just kind of pace around. Moving while breathing, while feeling the emotion, will let the emotion go down. because since you're walking, you're taking some of that excess hormone and you're flushing it through your bloodstream, which actually makes you, again, start to feel better, start to be able to think more clearly and logically. Everything's going to get better as you do that. So you want to move through that process. You don't want to just sit and be in the emotion. You want to get up and you want to move through it. And then the last part is when your timer has hit, when you've said, okay, I've had an hour of feeling this way and I'm done with it, you truly have to let it go. No stamp collecting, no remembering it for later, no pinning it up on your bulletin board. You've got to let it go. And the real trick to that, and this is, again, it's silly, but it works. The real trick to that is you need to say it out loud. You need to say, okay, I'm done. I'm over that. I'm moving on. Let's get to the next thing. You have to say it out loud to yourself so that your brain figures out that it actually is supposed to let it go. Because your voice is the most important voice to your own brain. Most important voice it can hear. So if you're just kind of thinking, yeah, I'll let it go, no worries, but you don't actually say it, your brain doesn't necessarily agree with you that you should let it go. So you have to actually say it. But we have to understand that we're creating this emotional boundary and we're saying to ourselves, we're allowed to feel this, but when we're done feeling this, we have to let it go. We cannot continue to carry that baggage. One of my favorite sayings is, life is a really long journey, pack light. And I really look at that and say, how much baggage am I taking, right? And emotions are baggage and they're heavy. So the more we can let them go, the more we can move through them, breathe through them, set them to the side, whatever that looks like for you, however you have to manage it. The more we do that, the easier our life becomes moving through that. And so one of the biggest things you can do is create that boundary around the stress that you're feeling and then move past it and get to the other side. And again, give yourself a day, give yourself 10 minutes, give yourself an hour, whatever kind of feels good to you in terms of for your own getting over it, because we all have a different threshold, right? We all have a different threshold. Okay, again, any questions, anything like that, put it in the chat. I'm trying to keep up on that. So the last thing I wanted to say about kind of these coping mechanisms of stress, and then we'll kind of go over them all and I'll give you some other kind of examples, but we have to prioritize our joy on a daily basis. One of the things that I've noticed in everyone is that whether you're working from home or you're at the office, when you get stressed and you get head down, I just have to get the work done, you forget that we don't really need to manage our time. We need to manage our energy. And you forget your energy is being depleted. Think about it like this. We all have the same amount of hours in the day, but we have some people who are able to do amazing things with those hours. Sometimes it could be because they're smarter or they have different skills, but a lot of times it's because they have managed their energy so that they still have energy to get more done. Many of us, myself included, have lived a lot of years where by the time we get up, go to work, deal with all the work stuff, and get home, we don't want to deal with anything at home. We're too tired to play with the kids or go run or work out. We're too tired to cook dinner. It's easier just to get something delivered, right? We don't have the energy. We have all the time in the world to watch 4 hours of Netflix, y'all, right? Joe Tiger, like Joe Exotic, it's the whole thing. We have time for that, but we don't have time to take care of ourselves. We don't have time to clean. We don't have time to cook. We have all the time in the world. What we don't have is the energy. The energy I have at the end of the day is the energy to sit on my couch and watch Joe Exotic. I don't necessarily have the energy to do these other projects. So what I think we have to remember is that joy, any little bit of joy or happiness that you get throughout the day is a little refuel button in your energy bank. If you think of your energy like your cell phone battery, You have to recharge it. And while we don't, and most of us don't want to let it run all the way to 0 before we plug it in, because then we're going to miss something, right? So what about your energy? Are you letting your energy get all the way down to 0 before you refuel? Little and scientifically proven 5-minute breaks throughout the day that bring you a sense of happiness refuel up to 1 hour of energy. Think about that. 5 minutes, a 5-minute break with some kind of happiness, some kind of good activity. 5 minutes can refuel your energy for a solid hour. So if you took your workday and you prioritized your joy, you took time every couple of hours to just get up, go for a walk, look at a fun picture, talk to a friend, talk to your kids, whatever it is, just took those little 5-minute breaks, you would refuel your energy enough that when the workday is over and it's time for family time, you would actually have energy to spend with them. That's why I think prioritizing joy is so important and making it something that I actually put on my to-do list. I put something on my to-do list every day that I have to do, it has to get marked off. That is something purely for my own enjoyment. It can be watching a TED Talk, a YouTube video. It can be listening to a podcast. It can be planning my next trip. Right now, y'all, I am so planning all the things I want to do when shelter in place is lifted. You should do the same. All the things you want to do. In fact, if you have anything good that you want to go do after this is all over, please put it in the chat box and let's share some of our good ideas on what we're going to do once shelter in place is over. Because a lot of us extroverts especially are struggling with, oh my God, I have so many things I want to do. So I have that on my list. On my daily to-do list, it says plan activities for after shelter in place. And I've been planning things. Once a week, I give myself that task and I plan something and I put it out, right? It gives me a little bit of joy, but that little bit of joy refuels my energy. So what can you do during your day? What can you put on your to-do list that's going to give you that little extra fuel to get through your day and into your evening? What can you put on your to-do list that's going to bring you just that little bit of happiness, that little bit of enjoyment? And it can be anything. I always try and say it's taking less than 5 minutes, so I'm not away from work for hours on end, but just something little that gives you that little boost, right? So what are you going to do when shelter in place is over? Oh, let's see what people are saying. This is awesome. Get my nails done. Oh, girl, I'm so with you. These are going to be so ugly. Date with my husband. Cut and color, hair and nails. See people, right? Absolutely. Hug my grandkids. Y'all, I will say this. I'm a hugger anyway. Most of y'all know that. But I'm a hugger anyway. But just the fact that I've been able to hug my family, I don't take that for granted because I know there's a lot of people who aren't able to hug their families right now. And I get to hug mine every day, whether I like it or not, I get to do it, right? So those are things we have to think about. What are we going to do when this is over? Ooh, patio with margaritas and queso. I am totally down for that. Check out the new city I now call home. Oh, awesome, right? Get out and explore. Get a massage. Absolutely, Jacqueline. Definitely. Right? So just think about that right now. That little bit that we just did right now, how many of you felt a little bit happier, a little bit lighter, just in this little tiny conversation? Just to focus on something else, something positive, something happy. Now, what if that could refuel you for a whole hour, right? Think about that, how powerful that is. That's why we need to be prioritizing it, especially in times of stress. So, trying to get my, okay. Well, I couldn't get my PowerPoint to work there, sorry. Let's make sure it's there. Okay. So what are the things that we need to do when we're stressed out? Number one, focus on our senses. How do we make sure that all of our senses are getting some good use and getting to see pretty things, smell good things, all the things? How do we make sure that we accept different tolerance levels than others? How do we give grace and empathy to others as they're stressed out right now? Because it's not just us who are stressed. It is it is them, it is other people who are stressed. And we need to be accepting and understanding of all of that. And that's important, right? That's really important that we have the acceptance that other people are probably handling this differently. I talked to somebody last week, actually, who she's been working from home for like, I don't know, 15 years. I mean, like a long time. It was something crazy. She said over a decade. I can't remember if it's 15 or 17, but it was over a decade. So working from home is no big deal to her. So this is no different for her. She doesn't feel the difference in this. She goes, yeah, I can't go out to my favorite restaurant. But other than that, you know, she goes, no difference for me. And I get that. I understand this may not be a big thing for people. But what she has to understand, right, is that it is a big deal for others, right? For my friend who's dealing with 2 full-time from home working adults plus 3 kids that they're now supposed to educate, right? That person is gonna struggle with stress a little bit differently than the person who just feels like, oh, it's a normal average day. So we have to be able to have that grace and empathy towards each other and accept that we have some different tolerance levels when it comes to our stress and our emotions. We need to create those boundaries for our emotions. Create those elements where we say, okay, this is the time I'm allowed to feel this, and then I'm done. I'm gonna feel it for this amount of time, and then I'm going to move on. And give ourselves the ability, give ourselves the permission to break down and feel it, because right now you're feeling it, that's okay. By the way, the reason I picked the stress ball thing is if you have a stress ball, go for it, right? That's a good one too. And we need to prioritize these little, what I call daily delights, these joy breaks, these little 5 minutes to wake up your happy place, absolutely, right? These little 5 minutes that'll refuel our energy to keep us going. And right now, as stressed as everything can be, it's super important to make sure you're focused on your self-care. You know, self-care isn't always just about taking care of you. It's about taking care of you so that you can take care of others. And so, you know, whether that means you need to cook a meal or read a book or listen to a podcast or have 5 minutes of silence or meditate or work out or whatever the things are for you, realize that it's not about being selfish. It's about being selfless. It's about doing the self-care for you so that you can give to other people because you've refueled. And that's what that's really about. So the next time somebody says to you, right, like, I don't have time to do it, or you say to somebody else, I don't have time to go. I want you to replace the word time with energy and see how it feels. I don't have the energy to go. I don't have the energy to do that, right? When you change that dialogue, it can change how you feel about things, and that can help you. The last thing I want to say kind of on stress as a whole and managing stress, I think the number one thing we can do is to have grace, not only with others, but with ourselves. Be okay with the fact that it's tough. Be okay with the fact that you're stressed out, you're overwhelmed, there's a lot of fear and anxiety. Be okay with the fact that you're not living your best life today. That's okay. Give yourself permission. That's okay. There's grace there, right? What we have to do is we have to control what we can so that we can live the life that we want to live, right? Control what we can. Now, I can't always control, right, my emotional reaction to something. Something may happen and it may trigger something in me, and I can't always control that. I can't always control my emotional reaction. I can always control my verbal response. I want you to think about that. I cannot always control my emotional reaction. I can always control my verbal response. So when you're feeling stressed, when things are getting to you, the best thing you can do, the best thing, realize it's happening, control your verbal response. Make sure you're not taking your stress and your emotion out on the person in front of you, whether that be via video or the person standing next to you or over the phone, any of the things, or even through email. I think we all know the lesson in email about don't write an email mad, right? But how much of us, right, are we kind of letting the stress bubble up and bubble over into our conversations. And we need to stop that. And that, I think, is the biggest lesson. Have grace for yourself, allow yourself the permission to have a bad day, to feel it, but really try and control your verbal response, because my emotions are going to play up. I don't need to take them out on the person in front of me. So what I'd love to do to finish it up, for those of you that are still with us and still participating, I appreciate that. I know webinar is never as great as being live and in person. But what I would love is for you to put into the chat box, what's one takeaway that you have from today's session? What's one thing you're going to do or say or remember as you move forward and as we're handling this stressful time? So what's one takeaway that you have? And I want to be able to acknowledge those for you in the chat. So put into the chat, what's your greatest takeaway from today's session, and then we'll close it out. Okay, let's see, takeaway. Managing stress is a priority. Focus on joy. That's a beautiful takeaway. Thank you so much. Replace the word time with the word energy. I will tell you, that was life-changing for me. I started doing that about a year ago, and it totally changed the game. When like people ask me like, hey, you want to go hang out? Oh, I don't have time. Really what I'm saying is I don't have energy, because I always have time. Just because I'm not going out with them just means I'm going to sit on my couch and watch Netflix, right? I have time. I don't have energy. It's really, really good, really good life change for you. So definitely glad to share that with you today. Creating small areas of joy to increase energy. Like I said, 5 minutes. 5 minutes of happiness can refuel 1 hour of energy. 5 minutes for 1 hour. It's a really cool exchange. So you definitely want to do that. Schedule something to bring me joy on my calendar. Absolutely. If you're willing to put meetings on your calendar, why not put something that's joyful on there? Absolutely. Let it go. Be there for myself first. Don't just manage time, manage energy. Absolutely. I will make my workspace more accommodating to my emotions, so I'm not feeling trapped in my own house. Oh, it's so good, right? We feel trapped right now. I am one of those people. I feel trapped right now. And so I've had to do different things. Like my desk is usually super messy. You can't really see it, but it's usually super messy with all kinds of stuff. I've found, since I'm home every day, all day long, I've had to clean it up, because otherwise it just like totally gets to my brain. But also I try and decorate it with things. Like somebody gave me this sign years ago, and it's always just kind of like been somewhere on a shelf, but now I have it like right at the front of my computer, so that reminds me, right, of those things. So how can you decorate even your little workspace that you have at home to make you feel good but not feel trapped? Put joy on the to-do list. Coming at this with empathy. Easy to get caught up and think only about yourself and your family. Yeah. And remember that there are people, right? This is a time for gratitude. Be grateful for the life that you have, because there are some people who are hit even worse. And I can't imagine, right? So have empathy for everybody who's going through all of these things. Balance my emotions and allow myself to be upset. Let it go at the end of the day. Writing down the senses that make me happy. Yes, you know, Brooke, one of the other things about senses, and this is like super woo-woo, but totally true. All of us have a super sense, a sense that is more connected to our brain and to our emotions than other senses, right? Mine is sound. I'm super impacted by sounds and by noise and music and all of those things. We all have a super sense. Find what your super sense is. It's really, really cool to start playing with that. Get up and move around more during the day. Remember that I can't always control my emotional response. I can control the verbal. So good, right? So good to control the verbal. And that's something that I think we all need to do. Life is a journey, travel light. Oh man, that's a hard one for me, but I try it. I try and say it all the time. I actually have that on one of my quotes on my, in my bedroom on my wall. And it says, life is a journey, travel lightly. It's a reminder, and it has a person walking and then all of their bags on the other side of the paper, right? The canvas. So it's kind of cute. It's like she left her bags. I like that. Left her baggage. It's okay to break down, pick yourself up, set a deadline, move on. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being with me today, for being here through all this, and for trying to manage your stress in the best ways possible. I hope that today you got a couple of strategies to help you And as always, if I can be of any assistance to you during this time, just reach out. I'm always here for you. Jacqueline, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Stevie. This has been so awesome. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. It's just always a pleasure to have you speaking to us. We also want to thank everyone for joining us today and to each of you who participated in the chat sessions. And also many thanks to our BOMA Greater Dallas Foundation partners for their support. 5, ABM, Empire Roofing, Facilities Solution Group, Night Restoration Services, Select Commercial Services, Sun Commercial Roofs, United Protective Services. And then finally, we know that there's so much information that we all need, so we'll hold weekly webinars on topics related to COVID-19. Since next Friday is Good Friday, we're holding our next webinar on Monday, April 13th. Information will be available soon. And until then, stay healthy, be safe, and have a good day.